a kiss in the night, heart and soul.
See you. Very good. Very good. Meanwhile, I'd like to thank you for coming. The Hungarian Freemasonry would like to express big appreciation. We are very thankful to the only one Hungarian established lodge in abroad, because at the moment there is one more lodge in Austria, which have been established in 1992, but it's at the moment, unfortunately, it is on intensive care unit, so we cannot maintain, but with big difficulties, this lodge in Vienna, because of there are not enough number of brethren in Vienna, and we try to help them from Hungary, but the distance is 240 kilometers, and the problem is the current war in the neighborhood. But that's why I have to express to you my thanks in the name of the brethren, and I try to begin slowly. May I start it, or?
Yes, Brother Frigyes, back we are.
Okay.
Thank you for the participation, for the lecture. Please, we will not wait for. Please.
Okay.
The
my presentation is Macedônia Risorta, or in Italian, Macedônia Risorta. This is a story of an interesting fraternal letter from the former Ottoman Empire to the Hungarian Lodge Democratia. An important contribution to the history of Turkish-Hungarian fraternal connection is a letter which can be found in the National Archive of Budapest, in which millions of documents are stored concerning the Hungarian as well as the international history of Freemasonry. The majority of those documents are unfortunately not digitalized. Total digitalization would be necessary. However, we don't have the personnel and funds for these huge project. If you could show us the first slide. This is the map of Macedonia, and the next slide, please. This it is a geographical map, and here you can see this small North Macedonia, which is nowadays Macedonia, yes. And in the surrounding area, you can see the neighbor state as Bulgaria, Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, and of course, Greece. So if we try to look for another map, I have just one more slide. Here you can see North Macedonia is the nowadays Macedonia is just the northern area of Macedonia. At the yellow one, you can see the Greek part of so-called southern Macedonia, and a part of Bulgaria, and a very small part of Albania, which belongs to the historian Macedony. Historian Macedony belonged to Hellas in the antique time. It is not a geographical, but in national and in other respect is a whole entity, which has a lot of problem with Greek, Albanian, Bulgarian, Serb, and other inhabitants. Next slide, please. Of Budapest, where the largest archive is, where you can find the whole history of the Hungarian Freemasonry, and of course, millions of documents concerning the history of the whole history of the Brotherhood. If you can give me the next slide, we see the conference hall of this splendid house, which is full with documents. I like to show you the next slide. Here you see that the documents are in small boxes, and it is not ordered by Freemason. And a lot of objects and memories of the old time when the Hungarian Freemasonry was established. The Hungarian Freemasonry can look back for a 300 years history, and it began in the era of Maria Theresia, Queen of Habsburgs. At this time, Hungary was a slave of Austria, colony of Austria. So today the topic is a letter. The letter was probably found by a talented Hungarian from Germany, who shared this document with a circle of Hungarian professional researchers, as well with the Quatuor Coronati Hungary Freemason researchers. The goal of our research was to place this letter into the history of Freemasonry. Documents, I can't show you the document. If you show some next, this is the letter which was sent from the Macedônia Risorta Lodge. Macedônia Risorta Lodge is a lodge which was established by Italians. Risorta is similar to Rinascita, so newborn or born again. If you look for the roots of this name, it used to be another lodge in the Italian Grand Lodge, and the name was Italia Risorta. So the renewed or Renata Loggia d'Italia. Some years later was established the Lodge Macedônia Risorta, not in the nowadays. The Thessaloniki's name is at the moment in English Salonika. The letter was written not in Turkish, not in Greek, not in even Italian, but in French. The text is as follows. Here, if you can show the upper part of this letter, you can see maybe, Lotzi, could you help me, please, to show the beginning of the letter? The date is 1910, 21st March, yes, and here these letters, AGDGADU is alla gloria del grande architetto dell'universo. Massoneria Universale and the Italian family. Of course, the three characteristic words of the Freemasonry's libertà, uguaglianza, and fratellanza, which is fraternity, equality, and liberty. Is a unique letter, so we don't have any other letter of this correspondence. And the text is, en réponse à votre honoré relative à la demande de vous faire connaître le nom de quelques personnes dignes de faire part de nouvelles loges que vous pensez installer à Sarajevo, nous avons l'honneur de vous citer le nom suivant. What is in English, we would like here to send you the name of those people who would like to help installing a lodge in Sarajevo. And the names are here. Unfortunately, there are no Turkish invited, I think so. But if there is somebody from Turkey, please try to help me. These names are characteristic name of Sarajevo: Rezul Begovic Abdul Rahman. And he's a merchant from Trebinje, I think so, Treben. Rezul Begovic Sarajevo. Šihovic from Trebinje, and Omar Bey Ridvan Begovic from Stulja, Mustafa Stranja from Stulja, and Shakir Bey Shakic from Sarajevo. I cite the letter dans l'espoir que vous pouvez arriver à former à la loge projetée. Veuillez agréer, très chers frères, nos plus fraternelles salutations. Par mandat de la loge de secrétaire, Moïse S. Levy. We hope you to be able to establish this projected lodge. We send you the best fraternal wishes. Secretary Moise S. Levy. Please, the next slide, if it's possible. No, the next one. Oh, no. No, the next one, please. Unfortunately, I don't find a little bit. Yes, okay. During the political social events of the past 150 years damaged the total mass of this valuable material concerning the history of Hungarian Freemasonry at the moment is in a little bit better circumstances, for it's had a decent environment with the right humidity. Moreover, no can steal from it anymore. During the past 100 years, Hungary suffered by different wars, revolutions, riots, and so that's why the material, this is the very big amount of such documents have been damaged many times, but at the moment it is on. We don't know anything about the antecedents of letter. Symbolic Grand Lodge of Hungary contained more than 120 lodges. The overall population of Hungary is 10 million of inhabitants. And so more than 120 lodges and 25 Masonic circles. More than 10,000 members was in that time. Now there are not more than 300-400 members. Many lodge houses were situated in the countryside, safe economical forces, many potent and well-respected leaders, prominent artists, doctors, lawyers, and even politicians. Important beneficial activity. By the time of our letter, the Symbolic Grand Lodge the new lodge in Sarajevo, Bosnia, Herzegovina. In consequence of the occupation of Bosnia by the Austrian Hungarian monarchy. In Austria, there was no independent Masonic obedience, as the Habsburgs didn't tolerate Freemasonry in Austrian territory. Here I have to tell you that so-called border lodges had big importance. Several Austrian lodge houses were located on the Hungarian side of Austro-Hungarian border. The name of them is borderline lodges, where they could work in relative safety. The Lodge Democratia was established in 1887 by the Symbolic Grand Lodge of Hungary, just after the famous union English established blue masonry and by the Grand Orient of France established so-called red masonry. It was a big and successful lodge, the Democratia. Many active, clever members produced more than 100 communication and booklets in various Masonic topics. One of his worshipful masters was an editor-in-chief of periodical Kelet, Orient, which gave an overview on actual and past Mason programs, and the name was Ballagi Mór. He remained for a longer period editor of the newspaper, but he got in the same time other diplomatically sensitive duties. For example, like establishing the first Serbian lodge, Pobratim, in Belgrade. Old Hungarian Grandmaster Jovanovic sent him instead of himself with two lower ranked members of the Grand Lodge to establish the new Lodge of Serbia. Ballagi Mór became popular after the successful and splendid process of initiation. Here have I to mention the existence of a Serbian lodge established by Turks many years ago, the Alikoc lodge. Some of them maybe know something about this lodge, but as it for us Hungarian, the diplomatic skill of Ballagi helped Lodge Demokratia to resolve even more difficult tasks. The letter of Salonika, which you have seen recently, came from 1,000 kilometers distance to such a small and poor country like Hungary. To understand the situation, you need to learn something about the establishing of the Turkish Freemasonry. Turkish Freemasonry was established generally with the help of foreigners. The English influence was maybe less intensive, therefore Italian and French initiated lodges were seen in greater number. First big obedience was Grand Orient of Turkey, Salonika, Empire. Meaning of words can change during the history. The name of Macedonia doesn't mean the same as now. On the map, you've seen the geographical situation, the geopolitical and social circumstances were very hard in that time. The nowadays situation is a consequence of a long, bloody and cruel fight, which in bloodiness was similar to the Holocaust. Refugees arrived since the Middle Ages, but from the 16th, 17th century, they came in even greater number to Europe. I'd like parallel factors of the nowadays time to the earlier time in Macedonia. Immigrants came to Macedonia from the 16th, 17th century in our country, which was quite empty after the wars with Turkey. Maria Theresia facilitated the immigration. Majority of Macedonians coming to Hungary were Christian or Orthodox. They stayed together, establishing new settlements in Hungary, usually on the border of the Danube, like in the town of Szentendre or in Budapest. In the neighborhood, Greek church and so-called Greek court. No wonder if the population of Greek Macedonians and Serbs saved their tradition from slowly assimilating to Hungarians. Part of them belonged to the rich aristocracy of Budapest. After some decades, like Dera and Sakellarios family, as well as Törlei, a famous champagne producing factory owner family. Here can you see on the picture the castle at Budafok suburb belongs to highlights of tourism with some Freemason origin too. Beautiful color windows, please the next slide. Beautiful colored windows were produced, yes, here can you see, by the famous master mason Roth Miksha. His works are but all over the world, especially in Germany, in Croatia, in Romania, and in Slovenia. At the Budafok Castle, please, if you could show us now the earlier the castle. Yes, this castle. One of his cellar was probably used for the brothers Freemason, as we believe Freemasonic patterns ornate the walls. However, Macedonian Hungarian connections were weak through the stormy centuries of our history. Here I have to mention an important and characteristic story. Please, the next slide. Yes, the next. Here you can see the secretary of the Macedônia Risorta Lodge, Samuel S. Levy, periodista afamado director de l'Epoca. Yes, you see this. We'll show the next. The next one. I explain you later. The next one, please. Yes, and here the next one. Oh, no problem. In Skopje, Skopje is at the moment the capital of Macedonia. Was the capital of the former Turkish vilayets of Macedonia. Here you can find an old watchtower of Jamia Sultan Murad. Please try to find the next slide, please. Yes, this is one. So this is the old watchtower of Jamia Sultan Murad II. I hope it to be in good hands. During the Turkish War in 1576, some Macedonians masterly removed the clock of the Hungarian clock tower after bloody war against Hungarian, and after the successful occupation of the town of Szigetvár, Macedonci masterly removed this clock. As the Sultan Soliman during this occupation died, the whole Turkish army was urged to turn back toward Istanbul as quick as possible, together with the perfect clock, which now measures the passing time in Skopje, is hopefully in the best condition possible. And now if we can go back in the slide to show the hero of Szigetvár. Yes, he is the owner and defender of the hero and aristocrat Nicholas Zrínyi Miklós. and Zrinski for Croatians. Recently, I read some old news from Skopje. Its clock tower was restored about 15 years ago. Baedekers don't report this story, but some of them declared the fact based on Evliya Çelebi's notes from his travel diary. The tower is now 37 meters high. The clock tower in Skopje resembles a tall minaret reaching the sky. Is the first thing that one sees when visiting Skopje, and its sound is heard from quite a far distance. On the second slide, you see the watchtower with repaired new clock, as the old device became worthless during the last 500 years. So they changed it for a brand new one as a donation. And now back to Salonika. Salonika, yes. Salonika was the second largest city in Greece, more than 1 million inhabitants, one of the capitals of the former three Macedonian Turkish vilayet. Vilayet is a big district, a part of the state. The town was founded by Kassandros, king of Philippos II, King Basileios of Macedonia. The lady was the sister of Alexandros Magnos, king and father of Macedonia, who spent most of his ruling years conducting a lengthy military campaign through Western Asia and Northern Africa. By the age of 30, he had created one of the largest empires of history, stretching from Greece to Northwest India and Persia. Second name of Salonika was Simprotevousa, the co-capital, or Simvasilevousa, co-reigning city of Byzantine Empire alongside Constantinople. By Ottomans. Since 1912, it belongs to Greece. In the town were born Saint Cyril and his brother Method as inventors and promoters of Glagolic writing in the 9th century, as well as Atatürk, who lived a little bit later. At the end of 19th century, Salonika was a cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic, rich city. The next slide, please. Here you can see the town used to be a provincial Ottoman capital, became a flourishing metropolis with café chantant, picture overcrowded inhabitants belong to more ethnicities, for example, Turks, Albanians, Bulgarians, Serbs, Jews, Russians, Romanians, Europeans, Englishmen, French, and Italians, and incredible number of mixed subgroups according to different churches and languages. Each nation had different religious and ethnic groups, economically different classes. The whole population was divided, full of ethnical, economical, religious, and other problems. Severe conflict had started in the town, where a lot of people were pressed together. Next slide, please. Violate able to control the order. At the next slide, you can see some defended pictures. So it was very, very hard to show now these pictures, which cannot show the best face of Macedonian people, always rioting, protesting, fighting to each other. The overall number of assassination was 4,000 in a few weeks of Macedonia. It was not more, and at the moment is not more than 2 million of inhabitants. So 4,000 died people is relative very, very hard if to compare it for your Brazilians. The problem was that the so-called millet system, the old Turkish system, was crushed slowly, and the street demonstrations, like this one, for example, even assassination, sometimes massacres was common cases. Sometimes many progressive people, like Brethren Freemason, were hoping for a good resolution. If we can see the next slide, this is extremely interesting because it's, I think so, it is one of the few, if there is another picture showing this overcrowded street, they are the protesting Freemasons. Manifestation of Freemasons in Saloniki. It's a very, very interesting and rare photo. The movement of so-called Young Turks intended to upgrade the old and ill society of the corrupted and rusted Turkish Empire. This process started around 1980. Our letter is 1910. The Young Turks process started around 1918 in Salonika, and the first fall in the army. Let me please cite Young Turks' intentions as the initial period of the revolutionary movement. I cite, "We want brotherhood between all the people. We are all in one without regard to religion. Long life the fatherland, long life freedom. There are no Greeks, Jews, Bulgarians, there are only Ottomans." These were words of a Dönme at the Liberty converted Jewish men to Muslim, because they were three kind of Jews at the time: the so-called conservative Jewish people, Orthodoxies, the Neologues, and the third was the Dönme, the Muslim converted Jewish people. Here in the third picture, you saw the big overcrowded balcony of the Hotel Olympus, Celal Dervish. So it is of different people, different religions and subgroups of people. The movement of Young Turks was the last attempt to restore Turkey, last chance for Ottomanization of or Turkization of the mass of Turks, Greeks, Bulgarians, Jews, Donme, Serbs, Albanians, Vlach, Romanians. Main organization of this Ottomanization was Ittihad Veterraki Cemiyeti, Committee of Union and Progress. Central power of Young Turks was Freemasonry, and especially the lodge of Emanuel Carasso, lawyer. Several months after the Young Turks Revolution, annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina by the Austro-Hungarian monarchy at 5th October succeeded in the same year. Demonstrations were organized daily. Each nation organized them separately. Different groups tried to fight each other without trying to find any humanistic resolution to the conflict. In the city appeared this time 20 newspapers in Greek, Turkish, French, English, Russian, Italian. The overall number of inhabitants was 106. These newspapers, the number of French language, for example, L'Indépendant, L'Écho de France, Paris Balkan, with 6,000 to 18,000 exemplars. Balkan News in English, 25,000 exemplars. Ruski Vestnik, 3,000. Greek Macedonia, 5,000. And Voce d'Italia, 2,000 exemplars. The Great War ended the splendid era, and it became swarmed by smelling, wounded, or dying soldiers, lots of refugees, nationalists, or even racist people. 1917, in consequence of a great fire, all the dreams of inhabitants were destroyed. About 70% of the old city center were completely burned. The number of homeless became 70,000, plus a huge number of immigrants and foreigner soldiers, mostly French and Englishmen, arrived. The chaos became extreme. From one side, it was a big tragedy. From the other side, it became a unique opportunity to rebuild a new modern Paris-like cosmopolis by plans of architect Ernest Ebrard, which important English, Greek, and French help. The letter of the Lodge of Salonika, based on earlier in Sarajevo, Bosnia. We don't know about other background of this letter. Actual political circumstances of this correspondence must be a project to be studied by professional historians. The question of economical annexation of Bosnia was an important plan for Hungary. We cannot reject a deeper research in the question for further negotiations toward commercial cooperation between Bosnia and Hungary in that time. Please here let me to cite the a doctor, a Hungarian doctor, working at the same time Alajos Finkenstein or Fénykövi. He protested against the occupation of Bosnia. So let me cite some words of him because they are similar to Cassandra's prophecy. They deserve the interest of not only doctors, but historians too. If the occupation of Bosnia is a given fact, it is likely to become a site of terrible massacre with much bloodshed. A desperate nation can commit such injustice that would otherwise distinguish in itself. I would like to remember you the actual consideration of this text to the note. Would be unable to end the massacre even if they were to fly there as a bird. I don't know whether the occupation would take place or would be followed by annexation. I strongly feel that annexation would not bring any advantage for the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. The Christian population, first of all, the Orthodoxies, will remain hostile towards the Austrian government. End of the citation. And another actuality, Bosnian dissenters, that time, between 1908 and 1910, tried to begin local boycotts for industrial and agricultural products, goods coming from Austria-Hungary. This form of economical warfare, which is without using weapons, played an important role during the so-called Bosnian conflict. Unfortunately, we don't know anything from the planned establishing of Sarajevo Lodge. Storms of later World War diminished his importance, and the role of boycott were emulated by voices of heavy weapons. Last but not least, we have to cast a glance to the history of Turkish-Hungarian connections just to find the right place of the letter. From the coming visitors, it would be a hard question to understand the special relationship of two nations, because Turkish troops during the Middle Ages destroyed Hungary. Battle of Mohács, raped women and kidnapped children, transported and sold them as slaves on the market of Istanbul, tortured them to learn the praise of their or neighbors' hidden money, forced them to assassinate each other, and many other crimes. After 150 years of suppression, the Turks turned to Hungarians for help organizing military medicine in the underdeveloped Turkey. Our authorities didn't refuse the SOS appeal. In the Turkish-Russian war, a couple of our medical doctors, more than 50 Hungarian doctors, as well as surgeons, left Hungary they organized military camp hospitals, surgical departments at the Istanbul University of Medicine. If we can believe the illustrated reports of the actual newspapers, that time started the use of train transport of wounded soldiers with operating room. Please, the next slide. Here you can see the first military hospital train. Pictures are from a Hungarian newspaper. The title can you see on the next slide, please? This is inside of the you see the newspaper Háború Krónika, a war chronicle from 1887, excuse me, 78, Budapest. In the inside lying wounded or operated patients with a group of easier wounded soldiers. There are many such reports, and please, I'd like to ask you the next slide. Here you can see the wounded people of the Turkish army, as well as the barber surgeon of Turkey at work in the military camp. After the downfall of the revolution of the Hungarian liberty in 1849, thousands of escaping Hungarian revolutionary soldiers were settled in the Ottoman Empire. Maybe therefore the situation between former enemies became much better. In 1910, this fraternal connection were continued by the time of Bosnia. As the involved Bosnians were all mostly young merchants finishing their study or experiences in Hungary, we cannot exclude the tendency of making economical connections with new brethren. In the Freemason periodical Kelet, more articles appeared with the news of further Freemasonic mutual connections. Young Turkish handworkers continued their education and studies in factories and industrial schools in Budapest. Another article reported in parallel with the opening of commercial bank of Austro-Hungary in Smyrna, nowadays Izmir, together with developing naval commerce through the now Smyrna, with the name of Zoroaster by Austrian, German, Hungarian, and Persian brethren. Unfortunately, the Great War destroyed the initial development of these fructuous connections. During peace talks, as professional historians reported it, remain unsuccessful in initial friendly Masonic connections. We can hope in the future too. Thank you for your kind attention. And thank you for your fraternal help, my dear brother Laci. And a question or request, please, you can ask.